Hello and welcome to How Church Works. I'm Scott Wylie. I didn't really expect that discussing the coronavirus or COVID-19 would be the first real episode of this podcast, but that's where we find ourselves. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today and really just kind of walk you through our church's response and reaction to the COVID-19 crisis in America. The way that we really thought about it and began to process it was to roll out different levels of response so that we could be prepared to respond to whatever might happen. And so let me lay that out for you really in 3 levels. Level 1 came into play when the issue first reached America and more specifically started to get close to where we are here in North Carolina. We immediately launched a task force that started meeting regularly to make sure we were prepared and had the information we would need. That group consisted of several of the pastors and particularly representatives from each of the various departments, so adult ministries, student ministries, etc., to make sure that each of the departments were represented. We invited the director of our weekday preschool. We invited the person who was in charge of housekeeping for the church. We also involved several people who were not employees of the church, but who are members of the church with different levels of expertise. We asked a research scientist to join the group, several people from the medical community, and we also have a member who has a level of expertise in this issue from his days with Homeland Security. And so that group began to meet. And our goal at the time was we were going to keep going with as many ministry programs as we possibly could. We planned to maintain our Sunday morning worship services. We planned to continue our midweek programs and ministries to the best of our ability. One of the things that we immediately did was we revisited and ramped up our cleaning protocols at this stage. Some of the things that we would wash or wipe down occasionally became things that we would do regularly. For example, the handrails in the stairwells or doorknobs. These are all things that we would keep clean with periodic cleaning, but they became a regular part of our routine. And so that was level 1. We began meeting to discuss, plan, and prepare. We ramped up our cleaning protocols, but we kept all of our ministries in place. As time went by, the governor of our state issued a state of emergency for North Carolina. Several of the major universities around us began to close and shift all of their education to online. Several sporting events and concerts and other activities in our area were canceled as people were taking some steps. The governor, in his state of emergency, had issued an advisory suggesting that groups of 100 or more not meet, but it was presented as a suggestion, not a ban, and the local public schools in our county were going to continue their operations as normal. And so as all of those things started to take place, that moved us into level 2, where all of a sudden certain aspects of our program were going to be shut down. Some of our daytime programs are closely linked to the public schools in the sense that mothers, for example, who are also parents, have a hard time getting to our midweek Bible studies when their children are not in school. So it became evident that some of our programs were going to have to shut down. But at this point, we were still going to continue to meet as a church for worship. As I said, the governor had issued an advisory, not a ban, and we had determined early on that we would comply with any regulations that were mandated for us. For example, we determined early on that if the governor issued an executive order that banned gatherings of a certain size, we would comply with that as a church. Because it was a nationwide issue, because it was a statewide issue, because it impacted all gatherings and not just churches, we didn't really see that as a matter of religious liberty or something that we should try to fight against. Had it been something that was just specific to churches, for example, concerts could continue but worship services couldn't, we would have probably had a different reaction than what we did. But because it was a state of emergency and happening everywhere, we determined that we would comply. But at level 2, that had not yet happened, and so we were planning to continue our worship services. Just yesterday, Saturday, everything changed, and that moved us into level 3. At level 3, two things that changed. One is the school system in our area decided that they were going to cancel. One of the teachers in the system was found to have the virus. And so the school system realized that there was at least one class that had been exposed. All of the teachers' colleagues and people that they came in contact with in the break room, etc., all of them had now been exposed. So the schools decided that they were going to close for 2 weeks. And then late in the day on Saturday, that's just yesterday, our governor issued an executive order that banned all gatherings of 100 people or more. In keeping with our current decision, we determined at that point that all of our on-site activities were going to cancel. We did not have our worship services today. All of our weekday activities that meet on campus are not going to happen. And so that's where we find ourselves today. Since we were unable to meet today, we immediately rolled out a live stream this morning. We did that this morning so that our church could hear from some of the leaders regarding the future and also hear from our senior pastor and be encouraged by God's word. I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes of this episode. If you want to go to Facebook and see the archived live stream, we communicated a lot of what I already shared on this podcast. But if it interests you to go back and see what our live stream looked like today, I'll link that in the show notes. Our senior pastor was there. I was on his left. Another pastor, a couple of our elders were there, all sharing different aspects of our response to this crisis. Now, going forward, there's a great deal of uncertainty regarding how long this might last. And so we've rolled out a plan where we are going to be forming our congregation into Sunday home groups. Our pastor on Sunday mornings is going to deliver a message live over the internet. We're going to be producing a study guide that goes along with that, possibly even some worship suggestions. And we're going to start gathering beginning next Sunday in homes all across our community. Now, for a church our size, that's hundreds of homes that we're going to need. And so we're working this week on making all of those arrangements. But it's our position that for a church to be a church, there needs to be times when we gather. We're going to be gathering in smaller groups, but we need to gather. The Lord uses the metaphor of a body in describing the church. The metaphor of a family. All of these metaphors relate to the idea of connectedness. And since this could go on for weeks, we want to make sure that our people are still connected to the body, that we are worshiping together, learning together, and also that our people are enjoying the fellowship of gathering, and it gives us an opportunity to care for one another. As people have needs, whether that be food deliveries or medical needs, we want to be able to serve each other. And so Sunday home groups is the way we are going to achieve that at our church. We're going to be rolling that out over this week, have it ready to go by next Sunday, and that will be the way that we worship going forward until the ban is lifted. Our plan is that we will resume our worship services just as quickly as we are allowed to, but in the meantime, we're going to continue serving. A lot of our programs are shifting to online. Our women's Bible studies, men's Bible studies, our college group, our high school and middle school group, we're going to be using technology and the internet to interact and communicate as much as we possibly can. 2 of our women's Bible studies are shifting to a live stream beginning this week, and more will follow, and we're going to try to roll that out as quickly as we can. So there's a lot about the future that's uncertain. We don't know, as I said, how long this will last. We don't know the severity of it. There are several confirmed cases in our county, so we do know that COVID-19 is in our area and people are now getting sick. And as a church, we're going to respond by continuing to meet as much as we're able, by using this as an opportunity to serve those in need and by trying to bring a gospel message of hope to our community. It's unfolding, things will change, but that's the process that at least one church went through in responding to COVID-19. If you have questions, comments, or even information about what your church is doing, I'd love to hear that. This is Scott Wylie. Thanks for listening.